Hello again, and welcome back. So this is part 1 of lecture 9 for Globalization and Identity 2. So this is the lecture where we were covering Roger Rouse, and yes, my joke, not Mickey Mouse, but Roger Rouse, Mexican migration and the social space of postmodernism. Now, I really want to go through this article close together because it is very dense and it's very, very tricky. So I just want to read through it together so you can follow along. I'll do my best to let you know where I am in the article. Okay, so with a bit of reference, we're just going to look through the article together. So this is our practical analysis now, or our practical look at transnationalism, okay, and these issues surrounding transnationalism, these cultural, also political, sociological, and as well as ethnic kind of issues surrounding migration. Now, this is a very practical analysis. Of course, this isn't just looking at the abstract in particular, but it's very much looking at the Mexican identity. It's actually written by, well, an arguably Mexican individual, or at least someone who's battling with their own identity. And this is at least where we're going to start, and it's what's mentioned in the opening paragraph. Okay, so if we just look at, we're going to move to the opening paragraph here. It's about halfway, if we go halfway through the opening paragraph, we see the sentence, well, it's just where it starts with the and, but it shouldn't, you know, where it says, on the Tijuana-San Diego border, oh, excuse the name, Guillermo Gomez Peña, a writer originally from Mexico City, reflects on the excuse me if I've mispronounced that, by the way, sorry. A writer originally from Mexico City reflects on the time he has spent in what he calls the gap between two worlds. Okay, so interesting. Now, this is kind of mid-sentence, this idea, but at least here we've got this mention of this gap between two worlds. Okay, so at least there's this kind of way of, at least in psychoanalytic terms, we look at this symbolic order. Okay, at least the way we're constructing our world through language. Okay, of course, language plays this role in subjectivity, which provides us with identity. So these are all issues ultimately of identity and subjectivity that we're going to be looking at. Okay, and so we can see now how our use of these psychoanalytic ideas in terms of the symbolic order can help see how language constructs our world. Okay, and the language used to describe ourselves, not so much just by ourselves but by the other, which we'll also be looking at closely. Okay, but this language used to be that is used to describe us, okay, produces this subjective disposition. Okay, so if we move on a bit further, okay, so we've got this gap between two worlds, and now he continues, the author continues, today, 8 years after my departure, when they ask me for my nationality or ethnic identity, I cannot answer with a single word, for my identity, in inverted commas, now possesses multiple repertoires. I am Mexican, but I am also Chicano and Latin American. On the border, they call me Chilango or Mexiquilo. In the capital, Pocho, or Norteño, and in Spain, Sudancha. My companion Emily is Anglo-American, or sorry, Anglo-Italian, but she speaks Spanish with an Argentinian accent. Together we wander through the ruined Babel that is our American postmodernity. Now this is just an interesting comment at the end as well, this ruined Babel. Of course, if we can remember the biblical story of the Tower of Babel, of course, where we try to build, man tried to build a tower to the heavens and God struck it down, and their punishment was, you know, to not be able to understand, or at least to have different language. Okay, ultimately a kind of biblical story explaining the origin and diversification of language. Okay, so we see now this kind of broken up postmodern, very much if we look at the modernity of building a tower and the post-modernity, I'd say, of this kind of knocking over. We look at the scramble, the linguistic ether that we're left in after the divide or the fall of this tower. Okay, and the divide and diversification of language. Of course, language constructing our symbolic order, constructing the world we live in. So we see the world that we live in, or at least this postmodern America, as being a diversified linguistic and therefore diversely constructed symbolic order, at least in terms of a national social identity. Okay, We should watch that National Socialist kind of comments together. But we see this kind of, social identity on a national whole, and the difficulty or resistance of this unified identity, of course, okay? Because the very notion of this postmodern Babel is this linguistically divided, and in this case, America, okay? So we can see this linguistically divided environment that we also have to construct in and subsist in ourselves, that we have to exist in as subjects. Okay, so we can see again the importance or the cultural significance of postmodernity in this language and linguistic community. Again, we know the importance of language and community, of how language goes to establish community and establish communal identity. Okay. So we're just going to continue on the article now. So moving along here to second page of the article. This is page 158. Okay, so just moving down to subsection 2 here towards the bottom. Okay, I'm just going to, there's a number of more so on the next page that I'm just going to read out to you. Well, actually this is all quite important, so just bear with me. Okay, looking from subsection 2 down, okay, two socio-spatial images have dominated the modern discourse of the social sciences concerning the people of rural Mexico. I claim neither novelty nor insight for recognizing their influence, yada yada yada. Okay, so really again, this is a practical analysis. While this practical analysis of the Mexican people, or the Mexican culture in America, again, we want to try to extract or distill the kind of theoretical or more universally applicable notions here. But at least, again, we have to remember that we are being grounded, and this article itself is grounded in a particular or practical study. It's very much an ethnography, okay, so an anthropological study of an ethnicity. Okay, the second paragraph is where he ultimately, the second paragraph here in subsection 2 is ultimately where the article starts to get divided. And this is very dense, and this is what I want to clarify, and this is what the first part of this lecture will be. Okay? So he identifies these two images which have dominated the modern Mexican discourse of social sciences concerning the people of rural Mexico. Okay, so and the two are, well, he divides, so the first, and again, also divides into two parts. Okay, so we can see he's ultimately got two parts, but the first has two sections in itself, and the second also has three. We'll get to them one at a time. Okay, so the first image is one to which I shall attach the label of community. Okay, so this image of the Mexican community. Okay, so we can just look at this idea of community itself and community as such in its abstract, but again, this is particular to Mexican community, or at least this observation. Okay.